Alright everyone, Cowboy Trades here. Welcome back to the channel for another short form update on Bitcoin. So in this mini episode, I'm going to be discussing when do I believe Bitcoin's bear market lows are going to be in. How am I going to formulate this opinion? Well, what I've done is I've got a range of charts. I'm going to be looking at things like the 4-year cycle theory, the SPX fractals, the NASDAQ fractals, which will obviously correlate to, very volatile indices in the stock market and very highly correlated to Bitcoin. The VIX, which is highly correlated to Bitcoin. When does this say Bitcoin should be bottoming? And then, of course, looking at some very simple metrics like government bonds and when is the Fed going to pivot. These will help you know when the market is going to pivot. So we're going to be taking all of these at face value. What I'm going to be doing is going through all of these one by one. I'll be saying this is what the Bitcoin 4-year cycle says about when we're going to be bottoming. I'm going to move on and say this is what the SPX says about where we should be bottoming. And at the end of the video, I'm going to take all the best points out of every single one of these charts and I'm going to use them to formulate my opinion on when I think Bitcoin's going to be bottoming. Let's jump right in. So the first chart we're going to be looking at is the Bitcoin 4-year cycle theory. Now, what is the 4-year cycle theory? It is the theory that from either peak to peak or trough to trough, that markets take approximately 4 years. How many days are in 4 years? 1,461. From peak to peak in 2013 to 2017, how long did it take? 1,477 days. From peak to peak 2017 up until 69k in 2021, how long did it take? 1,428 days. So you can see from peak to peak, it seems like these cycles have lined up very interestingly, but we already know Bitcoin's topped out. We want to know when is Bitcoin going to be bottoming. So let's take it from trough to trough. So from this bear market low over to this bear market low, you can see, once again, we're seeing a very similar number, 1,428. Let's now extrapolate this over and see, according to the 4-year cycle theory, when does this say that Bitcoin should be bottoming? Well, it says Bitcoin should be bottoming in the next week or so. There is another way that you could potentially do this, and this could be from measuring from, the peaks to the trough. And over here, you can see this took approximately 413 days. This bear market took approximately 364 days. Right now, we've been in a bear market for 364 days. I would like to highlight, I do not think it's going to be the same as 2018. I do think we've got more to go to the downside. If we're doing it by this way, another great metric is to add the 2 times that it took for us to come down to these levels, divide it by 2, so we get the mean bear market time from peak to low, and you can see the mean time is 388 days approximately. We've been in the bear market for 364 days, let's take away 364. This would be predicting that we should be bottoming within the next 24 days or so. So, the 4-year cycle theory, it lines up pretty well whether you're looking at peak to peak, peak to low, trough to trough, but all in all, in the next 25 days, that's going to be at the start of December. So the 4-year cycle theory believes that Bitcoin is going to be bottoming before December. Now, I would like to just state something in terms of this economic model that I'm going to be looking at. I didn't use any data from the run in 2011 up to 2013. Why didn't I use this data? Well, Bitcoin was very nascent back then. It had a low market cap. It was very new. It was adjusting to these markets. It was extremely volatile. And I do not believe that this cycle is going to be an accurate representation of the current and future bull markets that Bitcoin will see. After 2013, in my opinion, I believe that Bitcoin became a more mature asset after it hit a higher market cap, and subsequently, when I'm looking at the 4-year cycle theory, I'm only really looking at the data points between 2013 up to the 2017 cycle, and then 2017 to 2021. So 4-year cycle theory says we should be bottoming within the next 20 days or so. What does the SPX say? Well, this 2008 SPX fractal peak to peak, we'll be looking at January 1st and January 1st in a second, has been so accurate. We have literally not moved this model in maybe 3 or 4 months. Veterans of the channel know that we were able to call the top. We almost called the exact bottom on this, a little bit late on this one. And right now, I do believe that the stock market is going to be turning around very, very soon. So what does the 2008 SPX fractal say about Bitcoin's low? Well, first of all, we do need to recognize that the SPX is a little bit less highly correlated than the Nasdaq. And what I mean by that is typically when the SPX previously bottomed in bear markets, the more volatile indices in the stock market like the Nasdaq and of course, measures of volatility like the VIX, these topped out months and months and months before the S&P 500. So when the S&P 500 says we're going to come down for a low on the 13th of February, and then it says we're going to come down for another low on the 30th of May, I take this as the S&P 500 saying Bitcoin should be bottoming round about the 13th of February, because if we come over to the 2008 NASDAQ fractal, you can see round about that December, January, February, really round about that Q1, when the SPX came down for its first low and bounced, the VIX topped out at that time and the NASDAQ bottomed out at that time. And once again, Bitcoin moves with the tech stocks. So looking at what happened with the 2008 SPX fractal, this is saying, in my opinion, that Bitcoin should be bottoming round about the 13th of February. If we move on from January 1st to January 1st, you can see this would be saying that we should be bottoming round about the 28th of November. I think that is way, way too soon. But moving on from then, like we said, NASDAQ as well, 12th of December. If we come over to the VIX, as I've also said before in my videos, the NASDAQ and the VIX are super highly correlated. And to be honest, the SPX more or less just trades the inverse VIX in the first place, because the VIX, after all, is the volatility index for the S&P 500, but volatility can top. And the market lows may not be in yet. So when we are looking at things like the VIX, I unfortunately can't overlay the VIX over this because obviously what happened in the VIX in 2008 is not what's happening now. So I can't overlay the VIX. It will show what's happening right now instead of 2008. But when we are looking at the VIX, the VIX, basically, when the NASDAQ came down and bottomed in December, the VIX came up and bottomed just around January. So once again, I do think Bitcoin is going to move more highly correlated to the NASDAQ and the VIX. So when we're looking at these, bear in mind, these are saying that we should be bottoming round about late January. So there's a lot of estimates that we should be bottoming round about December, late January, so kind of that Q1 territory. Now, one thing you can look at to help identify when the Fed is going to pivot is looking at government bonds. Now, you can look at, the 10-year yield, you can look at the 2-year yield, and you can wait for these to turn around. But another ingenious thing that you can do is you can get the US 10-2 over on TradingView, and you can see you can wait for the 10-2 to break to the upside, because typically when the 10-2 reversed, it was a sign that, financial conditions were soon going to become more accommodative. So right now, looking at the 10-2, it does look like government bonds are going to continue pushing to the upside. So the lower the 10-2 goes, we should be expecting more continuation for government bonds. As soon as these start to reverse, it should be a sign that the Fed would be looking to pivot. And then another way you can look to pivot is, keep your eyes on some of these countdowns, like the Chicago Mercantile Exchange FOMC countdown. Make sure you're keeping up with the Fed's comments on inflation, because, the markets can reverse like this based on what the Fed says. So you should also be keeping up to date with every single Fed meeting. If the Fed do pivot in the next meeting or the meeting after that or the meeting after that, in my opinion, that would be a great time to really start pivoting, because I do believe as soon as the Fed pivots, these markets are going to pivot. I don't believe the Fed is going to pivot yet, though. So based on all the data that I just looked at, when do I believe Bitcoin's bear market lows are going to be in? I think they're going to be in Q1 of 2023. Why do I think Q1 of 2023? Well, I've discarded the belief that the Bitcoin 4-year cycle should be bottoming out in the next month or so. The main reason for this is because, if you're looking at the 4-year cycle in terms of the bear market that we're in right now, the bear market that we're in right now is absolutely nothing like what was happening in 2017. I've said this before. I lived through this cycle. I lived through the entire bear market. Yes, a lot of the investor sentiment is very similar, because we talked about the investor sentiment as we were holding the lows here. And I told you numerous times that the market sentiment while we were hanging around these lows was the exact same as 2017. I gave you a warning for that. But apart from that, the market conditions are completely different. Liquidity is different in the markets. The news is different in the markets. The economy is different. Financial conditions are different. Everything about what is happening in this bear market is different to what happened over here and what happened over here. So I don't think that we should be hoping that 4-year cycle theory plans out perfectly this year. I do think the macro trend will continue playing out, but nonetheless, I think it's a bit too soon to expect that we're going to be bottoming within the next couple of weeks. The SPX Fractal and the NASDAQ. Now, and pair this with the VIX as well. These are the three charts that I respect the most. The SPX has been absolutely, monumentally good at predicting every single peak and trough in the market. So with this, I really do believe the S&P 500 is moving very similarly to 2008. And when the S&P 500 moves in a certain way, Bitcoin will soon follow. So I do believe that the S&P 500 is going to come down and make new lows round about the 13th of Feb, will bounce up and then make new lows, but this is when I think tech stocks will bottom. It choreographed over here. We're taking, by the way, 2008 snapshot of the NASDAQ, 2008 snapshot of the SPX, and you can see how these differ. They both had a double bottom, but the SPX made lower lows and the NASDAQ didn't. It was done when the VIX started putting this top in. When did the VIX start putting the top in? 30th of January. When did the S&P 500 say that, we should be bottoming round about this range? 13th of February. When did the NASDAQ say we should be bottoming? The 12th of December. So, if you're taking an approximation of these, I really do think that round about February, slap in the middle was a very conservative bet for when Bitcoin should be bottoming. I don't think we're going to be bottoming this year. If anything, January, February, March, I find it very, very likely that is when, the markets are going to line up. The S&P 500 is going to be at new lows. Financial conditions are going to be tighter. The Fed has actually been talking about how they foresee themselves raising interest rates to get inflation down to 2.5%. And they've been talking about they expect, the raising of interest rates to happen until March. That's the literal words of some of the Fed officials. So I think a lot of things are tying up with, if we do bottom in February, perhaps we can start pricing in that pivot in March, and then we'll bottom in February instead of March. There's just many, many reasons on why I think we have to wait until Q1 of 2023 until the Bitcoin bear market lows are going to be in. That's all I've got for you for this video, my friends. As always, if you enjoyed, like, comment, share it with your friends, turn notifications on. Cowboy out. Peace.